Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to the week that was on Deadline Detroit. I'm your host, Craig Fahle. And before I introduce my panelists, I'm going to give you 4 words that I need you to remember in order because we're going to be quizzing everybody here at the end of this to make sure. Well, is it 5 words, Nancy?
Yes,
it might have been 5 words.
words.
I believe it was man, woman, camera, elephant, something.
It's person, man, woman, camera, TV.
TV,
See, even
camera,
I know
TV.
that. So,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Well, so you're
How long did you
practice?
How long did you practice
that? Nancy, you're a Trump whisperer.
Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll test you again, Nancy, to check your cognitive ability here. But I should like to welcome my guest. That is Nancy Derringer, of course, of Deadline Detroit. Nancy, welcome back.
Always
Alan
great.
Lengel, who is our
Hello.
editor and co-founder at Deadline. Thank you so much for being here, sir. We also welcome back Portia Roberson, CEO at Focus Hope. Thank you for being here with us today. And my friend, and it says Saunders under your name for some reason. We will fix that in post-production. But
computer.
Yeah, that's your cousin's computer. Well, this is Saunders' cousin, Coleman Alexander Young II, of course, former member of the Michigan legislature, a guy that was so popular they had to kick him out or else he would have stuck around forever. That's the way that stuff sort of works. Exactly. But thank you all for being here. I do appreciate it. Yeah, victim of term limits, obviously, here in the state of Michigan. But welcome, everybody. It's been a very strange week, and I mentioned that at the beginning, the 5 words that we need to remember, because apparently this was something that the president was quite proud of, the fact that he could remember those 5 words in this test that he apparently aced. The interview he did with Chris Wallace this week on Fox News was one of the strangest things I have ever seen. And God bless Chris Wallace, because he did his homework. He was ready to go for this. He called out the president on his baloney often in this thing. And I think Chris Wallace probably had more viewers this week than he's had in a long time. How much fun did everybody have watching that, or did it give you cause for concern?
We're beyond cause for concern. I think it's just entertainment.
I'm just trying to be nice.
True entertainment value at this point. But I just want to say I'm not a huge fan of Fox, although I do on occasion watch it. But I have to say Chris Wallace is a credit to journalism, and I think he does a really good job, and he really does exude the fair and balance that they pretend to have.
It was,
well,
first of all, I'd like to know, did we talk about this last week? Because I remember telling somebody else this line I heard, that whoever approved a outdoor interview in July in Washington, D.C. should be fired, because they said he looked throughout the entire interview like he had just swallowed a ghost pepper. I mean, he's just like pouring sweat. So, I mean, that was not a good idea. But I agree with Lengel. It's silly to say, are you more concerned now? It's like, I passed that threshold so long ago. It's all entertainment value to me. So
yeah, but I mean, at the same time, it was disconcerting in that he was just so willing, as he always has been throughout his entire presidency, to just make stuff up on the fly. But even when he was called on it, he would double down and say, nope, well, that's wrong. I've got the stats, asking his press secretary to bring him the data, which of course didn't show what he said it showed.
That was like a graph that my 8-year-old niece made. It was like, yep, I'm the best, and nobody else did. And so I'm like, oh, we're just making up graphs now. Okay, that works for me. I mean,
Portia, don't talk about your 8-year-old niece like that.
I know, right?
Don't do that.
Has he ever said, thank you for correcting me, because I was under the impression that it was this. He never does that. Why would anybody expect him to do that?
That is what sane people do.
He's an old man.
Our president is insane.
He is.
So,
well, he's old and he's addled. I think we need to bring that word back, addled. I like better than dementia, just addled. So go ahead.
The thing you have to remember is the two of many traits of a narcissist is, 1, they never apologize, and 2, they never admit they're wrong. And he is a classic narcissist, and he never admits he's wrong, and he never apologizes.
Well, yeah, that much we know. But there may be some things to apologize for in the coming weeks. Looking at what's going on in Portland.
It's something he should apologize for. The mere existence of him. It's something he should be apologizing to.
Sorry, I ran for president. I was just trying to build my brand.
Right. Exactly. Like, he's got so much to apologize for. point.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, but let's be honest. I mean, there are some things that are actually pretty scary that are going on right now. I mean, you take a look at what's happening in Portland. I think what is happening in Portland right now with the introduction of these federal officers who are driving around in unmarked vans, picking people up, sometimes just dropping them off on the other side of town and leaving them there. Other times they're actually detaining them for a while. There've been a couple of arrests, but for the most part, they're basically quelling these crowds, doing exactly, I think, what the president wants. He wants a video confrontation to be taking place so he can scare the crap out of suburban America that this is coming to your town next. And I worry that the protesters in Portland are buying into this and giving him exactly what he's looking for.
I think,
I think he wants confrontation to scare people into voting for him. And it's something that I think is incredibly dangerous.
Absolutely. And also, if I could just say, I mean, I just think that this is kind of scary because it kind of reminds me a little bit where we're going towards of the secret police. And that's what it looks like to me. You have people who do not have any sort of identification on, who are not identifying themselves, who are getting in unmarked cars and taking Americans to God knows where. They're not adhering to their due process or due rights in this. The Constitution is being violated with this. I just think we're going towards a real scary place in America that I thought the founding was supposed to prevent us from having these type of events going on in this country. And it's starting to see this president manipulating democracy and trying to change it into a quasi-dictatorship. And I think
it is a literal police state. I mean, this is literal police state tactics right now. So yeah, you're right. It's and that's I've seen one Trump ad playing on this fear of crime and defund the police. And it's pretty bad. It's some old lady, trying to dial 911 and somebody like breaks her door down and comes in and, does whatever to her. But this is exactly what he's doing. He's looking for.
Well, I think the message he's trying to send is, one, fear the liberals, the left-wing liberals, and fear black people. I mean, the idea that it's so outrageous that and people are beyond getting outraged about him, but the fact that when he was talking about the fair housing of getting rid of that's something that Obama had put in, and saying, if Joe Biden gets elected, he's not going to get rid of that. And guess what's going to happen to you people in the suburbs? Crime is going to explode. Housing values are, your houses are going to be devalued. And it's basically saying, look, black people are going to come into your neighborhood and it's going to screw things up. So be scared, be very scared. The whole thing with the whole Portland thing is that he sent those people out there to attack protesters.
Right.
And he got so much feedback from that. Suddenly he pivoted and said, oh, we're going to send agents to fight violence, crime, and
Operation
violence
Legend
in these cities. He sort of shifted. And I having covered federal law enforcement for a long time, I have to believe that some of the ATF, DEA people would not have been put up with going out to Portland and snatching people off the streets. I think, when you get some of the other groups, the Border Patrol guys or whatever, I think, they're a little bit more willing to do those kinds of things. But he's just trying to scare America. He's trying to create a race war that, white people, he's trying to, it's frightening what he's trying to pull off here.
The tweet that he put out the other day, I mean, he's obviously lobbying for the Karen vote, as we like to say, by trying to scare these suburban moms. And he actually used the term suburban housewives should be afraid. Suburban housewives.
He actually used that phrase, housewives?
In a tweet yesterday, suburban housewives. And when he was talking about this.
I don't have anything that I want, so I'm not coming to their house to take anything from them. On behalf of the black, that we are not coming to the suburbs to take your stuff from you or to know how you. And if you exist the way America always has, as soon as we get there, you will move farther out. So it's all going to take care of itself. Don't even worry about it.
Well, as a member of the Karen American community, at least demographically and the rest of that, I would just have to agree with Portia. It's like, we don't have anything worth stealing,
It's interesting too. For so long, the word suburban was always sort of code word for white. And city was code word for black or urban. And if you really look at the suburbs here in Detroit, Southfield, Oak Park, West Bloomfield, pretty integrated. It's no longer really just the lily white suburbs. I mean, East Point, a lot of, Roseville, Warren. I mean,
Harper Woods.
There's a lot of people living in the suburbs, and they're not all white, so it's kind of interesting.
Well, at the same time, though, the fact that you have a guy who's actually advocating for not upholding, the Fair Housing Act, he actually is suggesting that landlords should be able to discriminate when it comes to renting properties, selling properties. He's advocating for redlining.
That's what his dad
in
did.
a strange way. And I'm shocked that a property developer, former slumlord, is advocating this. I mean, I'm not shocked at all. But the fact that it is so blatant and so out there is shameful, I think, and something that we need to be paying a little bit more attention to as a country. Just saying, well, he really is picking at that race scab right now in a big way.
Oh.
And
all
he's,
of the polling that I have seen suggests that the Karen American community, with some exceptions, but suburban white women, are ready to vote against him so hard that they will, what's the phrase, bounce the rubble. Okay, college educated white women do not like this guy. All right, they're tired of hearing about the pussy grabbing and everything else. It's like they're done with Donald Trump. Joe Biden, whatever, he has many flaws. He was certainly not my first choice, but he has, shall we say, a comforting presence. And so far his touches on women have been basically at the shoulder level, for the most part. We haven't seen him pat his own daughter's ass on TV. So, it's like,
that's the bar.
Exactly.
I laid his forehead on my forehead one time, but I mean, I felt very, I didn't feel like it did anything.
There are people who are just physically affectionate, and I think he's one of them. But anyway.
Well,
can I just say something really quickly? I just wanted to say, just in terms of the history of the Fair Housing Act, remember that passed because it was after Martin Luther King was assassinated, and there was an uprising that took place after that, and as a result, they were able to get that passed. So I just think just the history of that. Now we're sitting in not only a global pandemic, but also a double pandemic, one with COVID-19 and one of racism that we've been dealing with for a very long time in this country. And so I feel just the parallels in terms of that history of someone trying to get rid of the Fair Housing Act, which was passed after Martin Luther King passed away during an uprising. I find that also to just be really kind of irresponsible on behalf of the president.
Well, but getting back to the issue that we sort of started this one on, and that, of course, is police and what's going on in Portland. But now, of course, we're getting word that the president wants to send in federal agents from various departments to combat violent crime in places like Chicago, Detroit, Kansas City. Right. Albuquerque apparently has been seeing an uptick in violence. And we have seen an uptick in violence this summer in a number of communities around the country. And the federal agents have been part of police operations in these communities for a long time. This is not new, but he's talking about potentially tens of thousands of officers coming into these communities. And the mayors are they're like, well, we'll take the help if it's the right kind of help. We don't want you coming in here undercover and doing this kind of stuff. But it seems to me that this is just going to sort of, I think, fan the flames a little bit of what's going on, and then the mistrust between police and the citizenry at this point in time. Those lines are getting more and more blurry every day, and I'm wondering what the danger is to Black Lives Matter and the movement itself if we continue to see this type of posturing on the part of law enforcement and the federal government when it comes to, putting this divide front and center.
I would say, we've had, we have federal agencies here. The FBI has an office in Detroit. They have 200 agents in the state, with the biggest concentration in Metro Detroit. We've got the DEA, which I don't know, they've probably got 30, 40 agents. We've got ATF, it's probably got about 30, 40 agents. We've got Secret Service, it's probably got at least 20 agents. We have the Border Patrol and all that. So it's the idea of federal agents having a presence here, and the idea that they're going to send in, and there aren't that many federal agents to grab. You can grab some from Washington, you can grab some from here or there. If it's done right, if you have federal agents working with task force, trying to solve homicides, trying to, seize guns, trying to stop the flow of guns, it can work. But the idea is the wrong guy is sending it in, and he's set the table already in Portland, and with total distrust, and nobody
They're not interested. I don't think they're interested in doing it the right way.
Right.
What they want is they want people in camo with lots of body armor and arms standing around in, on 7 Mile and Hoover or whatever, just showing as a show of force. And, what it means for Black Lives Matter, I think what it means is do not take the bait. They are baiting you. Don't take it. It's like, there's a time for breaking a few windows. This is not the time. So.
Well, it certainly seems as if it's, changing people's.
But maybe
I don't want to say
hear from the Black people on this one.
Well, that's why I'm just trying to get the conversation going here. I'm concerned though that any sort of movement towards actual police reform is potentially going to get watered down as a result of some of this and what we've been seeing. And I think that's the concern for me, is that we're not going to take a real look at reform at a time when people can point to it and say, look what's going on. We were talking about defunding the police. Look at the violence that's taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think, well, first of all, I think Nancy's absolutely right. For the Black Lives Matter movement, do not take the bait. And I think that they have been wise in terms of how they have been conducting their protests for the most part, particularly here in Detroit, that they will be smarter than that to take that bait. Now, on the flip side of that, there are people who have no association with Black Lives Matter. And I just would warn those that come into Detroit trying to snatch people into unmarked vans that this is not Portland. Okay. And so you start snatching up people on 7 Mile and Hoover or 7 Mile or Mack and Bewick, you might get met with a different type of work. The moms in front of everybody, standing in front of there protecting the group behind them. It won't be the moms for the march or whatever they're calling themselves in Portland. So, one ought to carefully consider if this is the right tactic, because again, I think the protesters who are looking for criminal justice out there handling themselves, I think for the most part, great. And have, Detroit has not seen sort of the broken windows and the looting and all of those other things. Will stick to that. But again, there is a whole different population that doesn't care about a green light, doesn't care about, anything else that might be happening, and will meet them with the same sort of force and resistance at Mack and Bewick and as, they come into town with. So just saying.
It would be awesome to see like the Mack and Bewick crowd, push those guys out of the neighborhood. So go ahead.
Look, you start trying to snatch up a Moore in front of the Moore Science Temple, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem. I'll tell you that right now. It's just, but I just want to say, I just really feel this is starting to kind of feel like quasi, not just a police state like you said earlier, but quasi martial law. And this is really what it's starting to feel like to me in terms of in terms of body armor, people with military type rifles. Why don't we actually do what the FBI and law enforcement is asking the federal government to do? I think the major issue that we have in a lot of these cities is the flow of illegal guns that are being trafficked in this country, because we don't have a national anti-gun trafficking law in this country. I mean, I feel that's what we should be doing, along with police reform, along with repealing or at least reforming qualified immunity, so a lot of these officers who engage in these type of actions can actually be held accountable. Because right now they're not, because there's laws that make it so hard for people to be able to sue officers to hold them accountable for what they're doing. And so I feel these are some of the things that we should be talking about doing in terms of gun safety laws, in terms of just stemming the flow of traffic of illegal guns, also investing in education. The reason why we've had all these shootings in Chicago, one of them, is because they closed a record number of schools in Chicago in 1 year in majority Black and brown districts. And so I feel these are some of the things that we're not really addressing, that the federal government has been absent without leave on. And if he really cared about Black people and really cared about crime in these cities, he would deal with education, he would deal with illegal guns, he would also deal with the housing crisis that's coming up, with the rental housing crisis that's coming up. I mean, in Detroit, I think we have, this Roberson, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have the majority of people now are renters. I think it's 53, 48, 47, somewhere in that number now that they have that rent. That's the first time this happened since World War II. So I mean, we have a triple pandemic. We got 36 million folks that are out of work. You have COVID-19, which Black people are 2 times more likely to get, 4 times more likely, according to CDC, to die from. And then on top of that, you have the racial pandemic that's going on, where police brutality is a 6th leading cause of death amongst Black men. So if he really cared about Black people, he would address those issues first.
You know what? It's funny that, you know, law enforcement is not the answer, the only answer to fighting crime. And as you know, as Coleman was just mentioning, there's so many different layers of things and reasons for crime, and to put it all on law enforcement and think that we're going to flood the zone with cops and we're going to make all these shootings go away and stuff like that, it's not going to happen. We need to approach crime in such a multifaceted way, as Coleman's, you know, mentioning that, you know, housing, education, social services. I mean, it's just so, you know, employment, it's, you know, economic development. I mean, it's just all so complicated, and for the, you know, put it all on the law enforcement, it's not going to happen. Well, and we've tried that, and we've had, you know, when I was in the Lansing Bureau of the Detroit News, when they had Governor Blanchard decided to build more prisons because he thought that was the solution to crime. We'll just put more people, particularly people, you know, drug users or whatever, will fill up the prisons and it'll be a safer world, and it wasn't. It's always the simplistic approach is never the answer to a complicated problem.
Right.
Although sometimes the simplest solutions to complicated problems are the right ones, like wearing a mask, everybody. That is a simple way to combat the coronavirus.
Nice segue there.
Apparently the president has seen the light when it comes to masks. He had his first coronavirus presser in a while.
Craig, he has not seen any light. He has seen polling numbers. That's the only thing he's and you know what? If you and I die because we're walking around without a mask, he could care less if anybody wears a mask. The only reason he's out there reading from a script, which shows clearly how bad he is at even reading from a script, is the fact that he has been told by Republicans in the Republican Party that his numbers are in the toilet and he is going to take the whole party down with him. So now they are telling him, please, please, please stick to the paper we're going to put in front of you. Read it and act like, oh, now we have to have, I've had this epiphany that schools may not be able to open in 4 weeks, you know, so maybe you have to push back a little. Oh, and maybe you should wear a mask. That's the only thing it has to do with. He hasn't seen the light. He hasn't gotten sane. He hasn't, you know, tapped into his, you know, intelligence, because there isn't anything to tap into. I mean, there's none of that. It's just a matter of him trying to win it.
Well, you're right. And not to mention, I mean, they just announced this morning that there is not going to be a convention in Jacksonville. Gee, who would have thought that, you know, Florida would have been the right place to do this?
3 weeks out when it was supposed to happen, 2 or 3 weeks out. I mean, my goodness, it took you to the brink to say, you know what, maybe it's not a good idea. And really, I don't even believe that. I don't even believe that he stopped it because he thought that people might be in danger because they were going to be close together. He stopped it because he didn't think people would come and he didn't want to be embarrassed. So he just said,
the optics.
Well,
also, I think the optics were bad of showing everyone gathering together where he doesn't care about people's well-being.
Well, especially in Florida, which is going to be the #1 state pretty soon in coronavirus cases, the way that it's going right now. And you know, here's the other stupid thing in things from, in my opinion, the Democrats have been planning a virtual convention for a long time. And now this is going to be a contest between who's got the best television production team out there, who can make the coolest reality show out there. The Democrats have a big head start on this one. They've been planning it for weeks. The Republicans are now going to scramble. And I have this weird feeling we might get, you know, a dusting off of Clint Eastwood in the chair again for the Republicans, because they're not going to have anybody that's going to want to participate in this. The Democrats are going to put together this Barack and Michelle Obama show that is going to be kick-ass and great. Yes. And the Republicans are going to be, you know, again, Charlton Heston's dead. I'm not sure what they're going to do.
Well, they got a couple.
Let's go, Dirty Harry. Let's go.
They got Scott Baio. That's right.
They got the guy, Chuck Woolery. They got a few to pull out. I am here for it. I'm with Senator. Pull it out.
They got Dana White from UFC. They probably had somebody fight on Fight Island. I can't wait.
You know what? It's funny. The Republicans have always had a dearth of celebrities to show up. When I was in Washington, in 2001, January, we had at the Washington Post, we had somebody at every corner of Pennsylvania Avenue on both sides covering the inauguration. And here it is, you had the float with the celebrities, and it was like Ricky Schroeder, Drew Carey,
That's Rick Schroeder now.
Chelsea Graham or whatever. I mean, it was so pathetic. It was like, come on, borrow Barbara Streisand or something for a day, something.
Oh, Kelsey Grammer always chapped my ass because, and all of these guys do, all these celebrities do, because basically they want to live in the world created by, in large part, not entirely, by Democrats. You know, they want to live in a place with a robust art scene. They want, you know, great theater. They want gay acceptance. They want all these things. They just don't want to pay more in taxes. You know, that's why they love the Republicans. But anyway, and plus a lot of them are just has-beens. I mean, you know, with the possible exception of Kelsey Grammer. I mean, Rick Schroeder. I mean, Scott Baio, Chuck Woolery is practically senile, for God's sake. Addled. Oh, yeah. So there we go.
Well, hey, real quick, we got to get a couple more things here. Republicans. We talked about Republicans. They find themselves in a bit of a quandary here, trying to figure out what the next round of stimulus should look like, and they cannot agree on whether or not to extend unemployment benefits, which is hugely, hugely important, whether or not there's going to be payments to individuals once again, like another one-time round of checks. They left town without figuring this out. And so basically unemployment runs out for a lot of people in about 5 or 6 days, at least the $6 federal portion of it. And it seems to me that they don't have any identity right now. They don't have any policies that they can wrap their heads around. In the meantime, President Trump says he's going to have a new healthcare policy by August 1st that is going to fix healthcare and make healthcare excellent. Wow. If these guys can't figure out a stimulus thing to get us through the next couple of months, they certainly aren't going to figure out the healthcare situation in the next 2 weeks. By Saturday, it's a 7-day countdown. I'm waiting. So it's like, hey, it's been infrastructure week for 3 years now. We still don't have a plan there. I'm not waiting on a healthcare plan from these guys.
Remember what he said a few years ago? It turns out healthcare is really hard. You know, it's really hard. It's hard. So there you go. But
it is pretty hard. But I mean, there's a lot of people that are going to be hurting. And it seems to me that some people in the party want to squeeze people enough that they have no choice but to reopen the economy and go back to work, which is dangerous for a lot of folks right now, especially when we're starting to talk about schools and teachers and things like that. I can't figure out what level of outrage I should have at their unwillingness to actually come up with some sort of compromise that might help normal people.
I mean, the bottom line is I'm not going to a bar right now. And, you know, I mean, you have to have consumer confidence to reopen the economy. I mean, some things you can do, you know, the car plants are open. I think they're trying their best to do things. But there's some, you know, look, the restaurant industry, I think is hurting. I mean, they're operating at a much lower capacity when you're supposed to have, I think, 80% capacity in a sit-down restaurant to make a profit. And a lot of them are starting at 50%. And so I don't know. It's crazy.
But, you know, you take a look at this. I mean, you know, you were in the legislature, Coleman. You guys had to come up with solutions. You had to compromise on certain things. And I mean, have you ever seen your own caucus so divided that you guys couldn't be unified on some idea of how to move forward on something?
Well, when I first got in, it was right at like the height of the Great Recession. And so the big thing that we were debating was raising revenue or raising taxes at that particular time. And so we had to have like multiple marathon sessions where they just kept the floor open for like days. I'm talking about we were on the floor like during the weekend. You know, it was a very different experience. And so I think that was the one thing that divided. But at the end of the day, we actually had a plan, and it was just executing it, and it just took us a long time to execute it. I think with this president, I don't even think they have a plan. I don't even think they're trying to. I mean, this is the art of governing without governing. It's the art of providing healthcare without healthcare. I mean, it's just the emperor has no clothes, and it's just I don't see what of anything they really can do at all about this. You know, I think they call this the post-governing era, and that's really what this is with the president. It's unfortunate. Listen, even with the issue of talking about racism, there was a tremendous opportunity for the president of the United States to bring the country together and to really work with Black Lives Matter to get something done and move forward. And he just blew that opportunity.
Did anyone think he was going to flower under that particular set of circumstances?
Maybe I'm just an eternal optimist or a sucker. I don't know. I thought it was just like, what are you doing? You can't even agree about whether or not you want to change the names of Confederates bases?
Well, wait, go ahead, Portia.
He had the most attractive world wars, and so, or something, he like objectified world wars. It was like, no, they're not sexy world wars. Like, why are you calling it that? And why is that your catalyst for why you won't change the name of Fort Bragg? I'm like, what?
We trained soldiers for these two beautiful wars.
Incredible wars. Nobody'd ever seen that before, you know.
He said he came up with Juneteenth. Nobody heard of Juneteenth before he started talking about it. They want to throw my head to a wall.
Abraham Lincoln was a Republican? Nobody knew that.
Right. So he said no one's done more for Black people than him, including Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
And then my favorite was, I've been treated less fairly than Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
That dude was killed. He was assassinated. That's pretty unfair treatment. Seems to me. All right, so we do have to move on. Hey, real quick, Michael Cohen getting out of jail once again. The judge's order basically said that the Justice Department was out of their freaking mind in suggesting that he couldn't tell his story, violation of his civil rights, violation of his First Amendment rights to tell his story, write a book about President Trump. We are now expecting a Michael Cohen book before the election.
Wow.
And for all the books that have been written already, this is the one that I think I'm most interested in, because Michael Cohen knows the sleazy Donald Trump.
He was the
real sleazy
Donald
Trump.
He's the Ray Donovan of the administration. Yeah. So
I mean, Michael Cohen probably knows about Ghislaine Maxwell, among other things. Ghislaine, whatever.
But you know what?
Gaslight Maxwell, whatever you want to call her.
More? Really, whatever he were to reveal, how much more? I feel like the glass is so full, you just keep pouring it and the water just spills over, because it's like there's nothing more that we need on this guy to say he's a schmuck.
Well, he's definitely a schmuck, but at the same time,
someone asked me last night if I would give up however many days, if I could wake up tomorrow and it would be November. Is it the 3rd? Is November 3rd our election day this year?
I do believe so. It's 100
If I could
days
wake up
from
tomorrow
Sunday.
and be November 3rd, would I give up like that time of my life? You know, just a complete here.
You mean the COVID?
Sort of going to a cryogenic freeze.
Well, you know, I would have to give up like half the
for another 100 days. Like, there's nothing to give up at this point.
Well, we're gonna be at home for another 100 days, more than likely. That's still going on. All right. Okay, we do have to wrap this up because we've been going for a little bit. And it is time for Schmuck of the Week. Nominations for Schmuck of the Week. And I've got a couple that I could put out there, but who wants to go first today? Alan, why don't you lead us off?
I had a few, but I think back now, we're in July, where Jared Kushner, I nominate Jared Kushner because a couple months ago he said, by June, things are going to be headed in the right direction. By July, everything's going to be back to normal. Everything's going to be fine. And I think how creepy it is. We don't see the guy very often, and we don't see him make public statements, but that's the last public statement I recall him making, and it's not a very good one. So,
well, he's always up there for consideration.
Yes.
Nancy, why don't you take it next?
I've got an obscure one. I was going to call named Kimberly Guilfoyle, but then I thought, mere moments before I connected for this call, I saw a Facebook post by Chad Livengood pointing out the sheriff of Kalamazoo County, Richard Fuller, has actually sent his own investigators to the home of a man accused of calling him fat in a Facebook message.
Is he?
Is he fat? I don't know. They only had a headshot of him. He didn't seem to have multiple chins. But as Chad said, he said, I have lost track of how many people have called me fat on the internet. And of course I replied, welcome to the experience of being a woman on the internet. But, but apparently this guy, he typed, you're a fat ass who needs to go on a diet stop us from living. Come and get me if you want me, tubby ass fat bitch.
Well,
The
B word
experienced that as a threat. So
well, hey, look, I mean, the B word is out there. I'm going to do my nominee right now, if that's all right. That's Representative Yoho, who allegedly called
that was
AOC.
my third choice.
Yeah, AOC an effing B. And a reporter apparently witnessed this.
Right.
He gave maybe the lamest apology I've ever seen. It's like he didn't even try to apologize. He didn't even mention her by name, first of all. And then basically just said, I'm never going to apologize for being American.
Yeah.
I mean, this was just awful.
And then, but you have to give the rest of the story. It led to a floor speech by AOC yesterday.
Which was great.
It was fantastic.
Amazing.
And I was telling somebody today that if this woman could be president in 15 years, I mean, she's got the Obama charisma nailed. And it wasn't a teleprompter speech. I mean, she was just speaking from her hearts and minimal notes, and it was great. So there we go.
Well, I love the line where he says, just because you have a daughter or you have a wife doesn't mean you're a decent person. Don't hide behind your relatives. I thought that was a good point. All right, Schmuck of the week, Portia, who do you got?
I think I'm going with Governor Kemp, whose name I don't even want to mention, but I will anyways, because the woman who's the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, happens to be my sorority sister, and so my sorority.
Well, you got to get her on the show for me.
Vice President.
We stand with her because he sued her personally for having a mask policy, a mass order in Atlanta to try to keep people safe because Georgia's exploding as well. Now he wants people to wear masks, but he doesn't want her to be allowed to order people to wear masks. Kind of now think maybe that could be a good thing, but he just didn't want her to get ahead of him. I don't know why he's personally suing her at all, other than the fact that he's, again, trying to kowtow to his fearless leader and his genius leader, that man who lives in the White House. So that's
the only reason he's a schmuck.
Yeah, he's a schmuck. That's why we have this game. So.
All right, Coleman Young, who do you got?
I have Kanye West.
Well, I feel bad for him because he's off his meds.
Because I think that his presidential campaign is going off the rails. But when he says that he wants to divorce Kim Kardashian while campaigning,
Shonda
is ride or die. Who loves his dirty, crazy draws. And to me, that's just way too much. So he's my schmuck of the week.
I feel bad for anybody that's dealing with that kind of mental illness. And Kim Kardashian actually put out a nice post about about dealing with mental illness and what people need to consider when you're talking about bipolar disorder, especially. But watching a public meltdown of somebody like that is never
pleasant. No.
He gets the help he needs and gets back to making music as opposed to anything else.
Yeah, and the saddest part about it is we watched it happen this week, but it's been happening for a course of years, and so it's unfortunate that nobody has been able to really get him. And you can't, if somebody's having those kind of issues, nobody else can make them get the help that they need. He's a grown man. He's going to have to decide at some point, that he needs help and that he's going to get that help and he's going to stick with that help. Because normally, he gets on the meds, he's sane for a while. It makes him feel like he doesn't need it. He gets off and here we go. So it is unfortunate to watch.
It really just shows why we need more mental health funding and better mental health policy.
There are a lot of Kanye West rolling around Detroit that have been in jail and have been released because there's no room for them in jail either. Because thank you, John Engler, for getting rid of
prisons are basically mental hospitals now.
They are.
I think there's the number of people in prison who have an obvious diagnosable mental illness is spectacularly high. I mean, the percentage is amazing. So
I talked to Police Chief Craig. He said like over 60% of the 70% of the folks that are in Wayne County Jail right now are because of mental health concerns.
Yeah, sure.
And completely ill-equipped to deal with their mental illness. So that's the only other problem. Like they could house there if they actually had any kind of training to deal with mental illness, but they don't. Right? That's not what they're there for.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap up with this because I do want to give kudos. I don't want everything to be negative. It's not all about schmucks. Sometimes people do the right thing. And in this, for this week, I want to say Twitter did the right thing by kicking all the QAnon nuts off of the platform. Now, granted, they'll find their way back. They'll creep their way back in. But the other sites need to follow suit, because this is just nuttery on a level that we have not seen, and it's gaining traction and currency at a time that we don't need this. The QAnon people are just absolutely crazy, and at least Twitter took a stand this week. It's not necessarily, it's too little too late. I realize, Nancy, but it's better than doing nothing.
What do I see off on the horizon? Is that an entire herd of horses that is now galloping out of the barn? We better close that door.
Hey,
all right.
Far down the road.
But anyway, so if anybody out there is watching right now and is actually starting to think about believing some of this QAnon stuff, give me a call. Talk to me. I'd be more than happy to talk you off that ledge, because you don't need to go there. I've seen it destroying people's families because somebody starts believing this stuff, and all of a sudden we're not talking to mom anymore because she's off the funny farm. I mean, it's just it's so weird and so strange, and requires such a level of suspension of disbelief to get into this, that you're like, why?
Right,
anyway.
It's lunchtime. I need to go down and eat my daily baby. It's just like.
I want to add one thing before we, white boy
Richard
Worshey Jr. is finally out of prison after 32 years, which is just insanity. And one of the last impediments there was Governor Ron DeSantis, who was sitting on the parole board, who decided that he needed to serve all his time for the trouble he got in down there, which was just insane. And they made him serve every last day, even during this COVID thing. I mean, if anyone was an obvious candidate to get bumped out of the prison system, it was Richard Worshey. And they kept him there to the very last day, which is really just
Florida man.
I need him not to be released wearing a Free Big Meat shirt, because if you know who Big Meat is, he's like a notorious drug dealer who's in the federal prison system. Not the shirt to wear. Nobody could bring you a t-shirt. I mean, I was like, really? You came out on day one with a Free Big Meat t-shirt?
I think that Rick Worshey is the reason why we really need to end the war on marijuana, and we need to rethink the war on drugs, I think, which has devastated people of color in the community.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, we do have to wrap it up. Just a couple of things real quick, everybody. DeadlineDetroit.com, of course, is the host of this program. They allow me to put my stuff up here and talk to you each and every day, and I appreciate that very much. But there's a really, really good series of stories about an upcoming potential merger between a Chicago-based health outfit and Beaumont. There is a bunch of great stories that have been done by Eric Starkman. Starkman Approved is the name of his blog, but they are, of course, here on Deadline Detroit. I encourage everybody to read those, because this could have a massive impact on the healthcare system that we have here in Southeast Michigan. As we see more and more consolidation, it's going to impact your choices as patients and our care. So read through it, make up your own mind about what's going on here, but the reporting is pretty important. And just wanted to commend Mr. Starkman for doing a great job. I'm going to be talking to him next week on the podcast to get a little bit more information about what he's been finding out about this proposal. The Attorney General apparently is now going to look at this a little bit more closely, but these are questions that need to be asked. And the healthcare system seems to be one of those things that we only think about when we need healthcare, and not about how important it is to the overall economy that we have in our community, how many jobs it provides, and how critical it is to the security and stability of your community. So read that stuff. Really, really good work that's being done there. And I just wanted to point that out.
They're losing a lot of doctors there. The CEO over there, John Fox, is just pushing people out, trying to save some money. And they're losing some of the, nationally renowned, cardiologists, anesthesiologists, a lot. And some of the anesthesiologists who've been doing the intubation, which is really careful. If you do it wrong, a lot of people can die during the COVID thing.
Of course.
So it's dangerous.
Anyway, that's just one of the cool things that DeadlineDetroit.com does. So please check it out. We do appreciate the traffic that goes there. I would like to thank my guest today, Portia Roberson, CEO of Focus Hope. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Also, Coleman Young II. Thank you. And don't forget, Coleman's got a podcast along with mine on DeadlineDetroit.com, 30 Black with Coleman Young. Check it out. He's been saying a lot of interesting things on that program, and I'm always to help him out with that each time he puts one of those episodes out. So thanks, Coleman. Nancy Derringer, we always appreciate you. Thank you. And yes, go enjoy your lunch. That was funny.
Right.
That's right. And Alan Langel, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
And,
all right. Thanks to Michael Lucido for engineering this broadcast.
Thank you,
and thanks to all of you for watching and listening and all that good stuff and all the support we've been getting. I appreciate it very much. Everybody, Try to enjoy your weekend. And remember, I know some of this stuff is pretty serious, but sometimes you got to laugh at it because that's the only way to get through. We got 100 days till this election, and they're going to get weirder. So enjoy the weekend while you can, everybody. Bye.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Stay home safe.
Bye, everybody.
My name's ML Elric. I'm an investigative reporter and a connoisseur of fine yogurts. I know a little bit about Detroit. I know a little bit about deadlines. And I'm asking you to become a member of DeadlineDetroit.com. Like me, I'm not asking you to do anything I wouldn't do. I'm making a monthly donation. My wife is making a monthly donation. I know that seems redundant, but they need the money, and the money goes to a good place. Getting the story out, getting the truth out. Because if we don't support local journalism, there's some people a couple blocks away from here who are going to get away with a whole bunch of stuff that's going to cost you a whole lot more than just a few bucks out of your pocket every month. Go to DeadlineDetroit.com, become a member. You'll see it's really easy at the top of the website. Give early, give often, give generously. Just give a damn. That's the best way I know how.